15 years after disappearing without leaving any traces whatsoever, Robert Williams finally managed to send a message from beyond the grave. In October of 2023, urban explorers discovered an old Nokia cellular phone at the bottom of an abandoned copper mine in Butte, Montana. The exact same device that Robert had used to send his final text message at 10:47 in the evening on November 12, 2008. Everything will be fine. Don't worry. About me. 15 years later, forensic analysis of the device would reveal data that would completely change the understanding of what happened to the 34-year-old miner on that cold autumn night. If you are fascinated by cold cases and technological discoveries that reopen investigations decades later, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to follow how a forgotten phone underground revealed secrets buried for more than a decade. Today, we are going to dive deep into the complete story of Robert Williams, a man whose life was intrinsically connected to the dangerous depths of Montana's copper mines. You will discover how data preserved in a Nokia device from 2008 is forcing investigators to reconsider everything they thought they knew about his disappearance, revealing clues that suggest Robert's final moments were much more complex than his family could have ever imagined. Prepare yourself for an investigative journey that literally descends underground, exposes the hidden dangers of the mining industry, and proves that sometimes technology can preserve truths for entire decades. This is the story of Robert Williams, and how an abandoned mine in Montana finally delivered the answers that his family had been searching for during 15 long years. Robert Williams was 34 years old when he disappeared in November of 2008, leaving behind a life deeply rooted in the mining tradition of Butte, Montana. Standing 6 feet tall with the robust constitution typical of someone who spent his life working in the depths of the earth, Robert possessed dark brown hair, always covered with mineral dust, and blue eyes that, according to his wife, reflected the determination of 3 generations of miners from the Williams family. Born in Butte in 1974, Robert was the representative of the 3rd generation of his family to work in the copper mines that had sustained the city's Sequoia economy for more than a century. His grandfather, William Williams, had started as a miner at the famous Berkeley Pit in the 1940s, while his father, Thomas Williams, had worked in the underground operations of the Continental Pit until his retirement in 2005. Mining was in Robert's blood, his mother, Margaret Williams, 67 years old, would recall. Since childhood, he played with toy mining equipment and knew more about geology than most adults. He never wanted to do anything else in life. He said the mines were his office, and the underground was where he felt most at home. Graduated in mining engineering from Montana Tech University in 1996, Robert had returned to Butte with advanced technical knowledge and deep respect for family traditions. He worked as a safety supervisor at Continental Resources since 2001, being responsible for implementing safety protocols in one of the most complex underground mining operations in the state. Robert took safety very seriously, observed Thomas Thompson, his direct supervisor. He had witnessed devastating accidents during his career and was determined to ensure that all miners under his supervision returned home safely every day. He was meticulous with equipment, inspections, and emergency procedures. Professionally, Robert was recognized as one of the most respected mining safety specialists in Montana. He had developed several innovative protocols for deep tunnel operations and frequently consulted for other mining companies in the region. In 2007, he had received a state commendation for his contribution to reducing accidents in the industry. He had an intuitive understanding of mines that came from decades of family experience, explained Dr. Jennifer Hayes, geologist at Montana Tech. Robert could read rock formations and identify potential risks that other professionals might miss. It was a rare combination of formal, technical knowledge and practical wisdom transmitted through generations. Personally, Robert was married for 8 years to Linda Williams, formerly Linda Johnson, a 31-year-old nurse at St. James Healthcare. The couple had met in 2000 during a medical emergency at the mine when Linda was part of the accident response team. They had 2 children, Michael, 6 years old, and Sarah, 4 years old in 2008. Robert was a dedicated father who always prioritized family above everything else, Linda would recall with emotion. He worked long and dangerous shifts, but when he came home, all his attention was on us. He built tree houses for the children, took them fishing at Clark Fork River, and always found time for board games on winter nights. On weekends, Robert maintained family traditions that connected the Williams generations. He took Michael to visit Butte's historic mining facilities, teaching him about the city's rich heritage. He wanted Michael to understand where our family came from, Robert had told Linda. Even if he chose a different career, it was important to know our roots. Robert was also active in the local mining community, serving as a volunteer at the Butte Miners Union and participating in educational programs for young people interested in mining careers. He believed in giving back to the community that had sustained our family for generations, Margaret explained. His hobbies reflected his connection to the Idri land and local history. He collected antique mining tools, maintained an extensive garden in the backyard, and photographed interesting geological formations he found during his work inspections. His collection of more than 500 photographs documented the evolution of Butte's mining operations over a decade. Robert saw beauty, where others saw only rock and darkness, Linda observed. His photographs showed the mines as underground cathedrals, places of hard work, but also of natural majesty. He deeply respected the environment where he spent his days. Financially, Robert was stable and conservative. As a safety supervisor, he earned $68,000 annually, a solid salary for Butte in 2008. He had saved $23,000 for his children's college education and kept all bills current. He had no significant debts other than the mortgage on the family home, purchased in 2003. Physically, Robert was in excellent shape due to the demands of his work. He didn't smoke, drank only occasionally with colleagues after shifts, and had never used illicit substances. He underwent regular medical examinations required by the mining industry and had no known health problems. Robert was the type of man you could trust completely, observed Pastor Michael Reynolds of the First Presbyterian Church, where the Williams family regularly attended. Solid, reliable, committed to family and community. There was nothing in his life that suggested problems or instability. His daily routine in November of 2008 was predictable and structured. He woke up at 5:30 in the morning, had coffee with Linda, checked overnight safety reports, and arrived at the mine at 6:30 for morning briefings. He worked until 4 in the afternoon, returned home at 4:30, and dedicated evenings to family and domestic activities. It was a simple life, but Robert was genuinely satisfied. Linda would recall. He had found his purpose, protecting other miners, supporting our family, and continuing a tradition that was the heart of our community. There was no drama in his life, no dangerous or complicated situation that could explain what was about to happen. What no one in Butte knew, while Robert Williams followed his familiar routine that November morning in 2008, was that in a few hours he would descend into the depths of the mines for the last time, leaving behind only an enigmatic text message and a mystery that would remain unsolved for 15 years, until the very mines he knew so well finally revealed where he had been all along. Wednesday, November 12, 2008, dawned cold in Butte, Montana, with a temperature of -7 degrees Celsius and a thin layer of fresh snow covering the mine structures that dotted the mountainous landscape. It was the type of morning that local miners knew well, clear and cold enough to make underground work more welcoming than the surface, where the cutting wind from the Rocky Mountains created an even lower wind chill factor. Robert Williams woke up at 5:30 as always, but Linda noticed something different in his behavior that morning. He was quieter than normal, she would recall to investigators. Robert always woke up talking about the day's plans, but that morning he remained thoughtful during breakfast. When I asked if everything was okay, he said there were some things to resolve at work, but didn't go into details. During coffee, Robert received 3 calls on his Nokia 6300, a robust model popular among industrial workers for its durability. The first call, at 6:05, was from Thomas Thompson, his supervisor, informing about an unscheduled safety inspection that would need to be conducted at Shaft 7, one of the deepest sections of Continental Resources. Robert seemed concerned about the inspection, Linda would observe. He said that Shaft 7 had been closed for maintenance the previous week, and that he would need to verify if all safety protocols were being followed before reopening. It was exactly the type of responsibility he took very seriously. The second call, at 6:12, was from an unidentified number that Robert answered privately in the backyard. Linda heard only fragments of the conversation through the kitchen window. "I understand the situation. I cannot ignore this. I will check personally." The call lasted approximately 8 minutes. When Robert came back inside, I asked who had called, Linda would recount. He said it was work-related, but seemed disturbed. It wasn't common for Robert to receive work calls so early, especially from numbers I didn't recognize. The third call, at 6:23, was to a work colleague, Marcus Webb, night shift supervisor. Robert asked for detailed information about activities in the mine during the previous night, particularly at Shaft 7. Was there any unauthorized activity? Did anyone have access to the closed areas? Were the questions Linda heard Robert ask. At 6:45, Robert kissed Linda and the children, took his lunchbox and safety equipment, and drove to work in his 2005 Ford F-150. He seemed worried, but not alarmed, Linda would recall. Robert always became focused when there were safety issues to resolve. He said he might arrive home late because he needed to check some things personally. Robert's shift at Continental Resources began at 7 with the usual morning briefing, but colleagues noticed he was more serious than normal. Robert always started the day with jokes or comments about the previous night's game, recalled James Morrison, veteran miner. But that morning, he went straight to business, checked equipment, reviewed safety reports, and asked a lot about Shaft 7. Between 7:30 and 12, Robert conducted his normal responsibilities: equipment inspections, safety checks in multiple sections of the mine, and meetings with shift supervisors. But around 11:45, he received another cell phone call that completely changed his behavior. After that call, Robert became visibly agitated, observed Thomas Thompson. He asked to speak with me privately and said he needed to check a serious irregularity at Shaft 7. When I offered to accompany him, Robert said it was better to go alone first to assess the situation. At 1:15 in the afternoon, after lunch, Robert descended alone to Shaft 7, a decision that violated basic safety protocols that he himself had implemented. Company regulations required that no employee enter areas closed for maintenance without accompaniment, especially supervisors responsible for safety. Robert knew these rules better than anyone, Thompson would emphasize later. For him to break protocol meant he had discovered something he considered extremely important or urgent. Mine monitoring systems recorded Robert descending to Shaft 7 at 1:22. Security cameras showed him carrying standard inspection equipment: helmet with flashlight, gas detector, communication radio, and his personal digital camera to document any irregularity he might find. Between 1:22 and 6:30 in the evening, Robert remained underground. During this period, he attempted radio contact with the surface 3 times, at 2:45, 4:20, and 5:55. All attempts resulted in static interference, common at extreme depths where mineral formations could interfere with radio signals. The last visual contact we had with Robert was through internal cameras at 3:30, Thompson reported. He was in Gallery C of Shaft 7, approximately 400 meters deep, examining structural supports with his flashlight. After that, he moved to areas that had no camera coverage. At 6:45, when Robert should have returned to the surface, Thompson initiated internal search protocols. A team of 5 miners descended to locate Robert, focusing on the routes he would normally use for safety inspections. The initial search lasted until 9:30 without success. Teams found some of his equipment: gas detector in Gallery D, communication radio in Gallery F, but no sign of Robert himself. It was as if he had simply disappeared in the labyrinth of tunnels, Thompson observed with evident concern. At 10 o'clock, Linda was notified about the situation. "The call that changed my life forever," she would describe. Thomas Thompson said Robert was temporarily unlocated during a routine inspection, but that teams were actively searching. Linda immediately drove to the mine with the children, establishing a vigil in the administrative office while searches continued underground. During this agonizing vigil, at 10:47, she received a text message from Robert's cell phone. "Everything will be fine. Don't worry about me." The message didn't sound like Robert, Linda would insist later. He was always specific in his communications, said where he was, when he would return. This message was too vague, almost as if someone else had written it. Immediate attempts to call Robert's cell phone resulted in busy signals, then out-of-coverage area messages. The last activity recorded on the device was sending the message at 10:47, sent from a location that telephone company tracking systems could not determine precisely due to underground interference. At 11:15, specialized rescue teams were called from Missoula to conduct a more extensive search. Shaft 7 was completely evacuated except for emergency teams, and severe accident protocols were implemented. At that moment, everyone assumed Robert had suffered an accident, Thompson would explain. Fall, landslide, maybe sudden medical problem. The possibility that he could have disappeared intentionally never occurred to anyone who knew him. During the early morning of November 13th, intensified searches revealed something disturbing. Robert's footprints led to sections of the mine that were officially closed for months due to structural instability. These areas were considered too dangerous even for experienced maintenance personnel. We found evidence that Robert had entered tunnels that no one should be exploring, revealed Captain Mike Foster of Butte Silver Bow. Emergency response. Footprints, flashlight marks on walls, even some papers he had dropped. But after a certain point, the trail simply stopped. At 6 in the morning of November 13th, 16 hours after Robert had descended to Shaft 7, Rescue teams were forced to suspend searches in unstable sections due to collapse risks. Robert Williams had disappeared in the depths of the mines he knew better than anyone else, leaving behind only an enigmatic text message and a series of questions that would haunt his family and the mining community for 15 long years. The Silver Bow County Sheriff's Department was officially notified about Robert Williams's disappearance at 8:30 on November 13, 2008. Detective Sarah Morrison, a 14-year veteran specialized in industrial accidents, immediately took over the case, initially treating it as a possible workplace accident with search and rescue complications. Missing person cases in mines are extremely challenging, Morrison would explain later. You're dealing with thousands of meters of tunnels, some stable, others dangerous, many not adequately mapped. Our first priority was to locate Robert, alive or dead, but do so without putting rescue teams at risk. The search operation quickly expanded to include specialists from 3 agencies: Butte Silver Bow Emergency Response, Montana Mine Rescue Association, and a federal team from the Department of Labor's Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA. 15 mine rescue specialists worked in continuous shifts for the next 10 days. Continental Resources cooperated completely, providing detailed maps, operation history, and unrestricted access to all areas, observed Captain Mike Foster. But even with this cooperation, we were looking for a person in an underground complex that extended for more than 50 kilometers of tunnels on multiple levels. Investigation of Robert's activities on the day of disappearance revealed intriguing information about the phone calls he had received. Detective Morrison obtained complete records from the telephone company, discovering that the unidentified call at 6:12 had come from a prepaid phone purchased in Missoula 3 days before the disappearance. The prepaid phone call was an immediate red flag, Morrison reported. People don't call mining safety supervisors from untraceable phones unless they have something to hide. This changed our perspective of the EB case from accident to possible crime. Analysis of Robert's final text message revealed technical inconsistencies that deepened the mystery. Telephone company specialists determined that the message had been sent from a depth of approximately 600 meters underground, much deeper than any area where Robert should have been working. Cell phone signals don't easily penetrate extreme depths, especially through dense rock formations, explained Dr. Michael Chen, telecommunications specialist. For a message to be sent from 600 meters deep, Robert would have to be in a very specific location, where geological formations created a natural opening for radio signals. More disturbing was the discovery that Robert's equipment found in the mine had been deliberately positioned, not accidentally discarded. His gas detector was found calibrated and functioning in a location where no dangerous gas was present. His radio was tuned to a frequency not used by Continental Resources. Someone, presumably Robert, had left this equipment as markers, Morrison concluded. But markers for what? To guide a rescue search, or to indicate something more sinister? Financial investigation of Robert revealed no obvious irregularities, but detectives found an interesting pattern. He had made 3 cash withdrawals in the days before disappearance, totaling $2,400. Robert normally used debit card for everything, Linda confirmed. I don't know why he would need so much cash. The physical search in the mine continued for 3 weeks, covering not only Shaft 7 where Robert had been working, but also connections with abandoned mines in the area. Butte was built over a historic mining complex that had operated since the 1860s, creating an underground labyrinth that extended throughout the region. We discovered that several abandoned mines had underground connections with active operations, revealed geologist Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, consultant in the search. Robert, with his extensive knowledge of local mining history, would know about these connections that weren't on modern official maps. In December of 2008, active search was suspended due to winter conditions and increasing risks for rescue teams. During the 3 weeks of operation, searchers had covered approximately 85% of accessible tunnels without finding any additional sign of Robert beyond the initially discovered equipment. The decision to suspend was devastating for the family, but necessary for safety, Morrison explained. Underground conditions during Montana winter make rescue operations extremely dangerous, and we couldn't justify putting more lives at risk. Linda Williams organized her own search operation, hiring private consultants specialized in missing persons and offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to Robert's location. "I couldn't just wait," she would explain. "Robert was down there somewhere, and I had to keep looking." 3 main theories emerged during the first 6 months of investigation. The first suggested that Robert had discovered criminal activity in the mine, possibly theft of equipment or dangerous substances, and was silenced by people involved. The second theory proposed that Robert had suffered an accident in an unstable area of the mine, and his body was inaccessible due to collapse or flooding. Mines are dynamic environments, Dr. Rodriguez observed. Structures that are stable today can collapse tomorrow, especially in old sections. The third theory, considered less likely by the family but persistent among investigators, suggested that Robert had disappeared voluntarily, possibly due to personal or financial problems he had kept secret. The evidence didn't align completely with any theory, Morrison would admit years later. Robert clearly had descended to the mine for specific reasons related to the mysterious call, but what he found down there, or what found him, remained a mystery. In March of 2009, 5 months after the disappearance, the case was officially transferred to cold case status. Morrison had conducted 127 interviews, followed 89 leads, and coordinated the most extensive search operation in Butte's history. But Robert Williams remained missing. For the Williams family, the transition to cold case represented a cruel transition from active hope to painful acceptance that Robert might never be found, Morrison observed. But cases like this taught me that mines keep secrets for decades, sometimes generations. I always knew that one day the mines themselves would deliver their answers. For Linda Williams and her children, the first year without Robert was a journey through all stages of grief, complicated by the absence of definitive closure. Part of me always expected him to simply come home one day, Linda would confess years later. Without a body, without conclusive evidence of death, it was impossible to truly accept that he was gone. None of them could imagine that 15 years later, urban explorers in an abandoned mine would find Robert's Nokia 6300, preserved by the dry conditions of Montana's underground, still containing data that would completely change their understanding of the events of November 12, 2008. The 15 years that followed Robert Williams's disappearance profoundly transformed not only the Williams family, but the entire mining community of Butte. Linda Williams developed a painful routine that she maintained for more than a decade. Every Tuesday at 10:47 in the evening, exactly the time of Robert's last message, she would drive to the Continental Resources entrance and spend an hour sitting in the parking lot, as if her presence could somehow draw Robert back from the depths. "I know it seems irrational," Linda had admitted during a 2015 interview, "but that mine swallowed my husband, and I felt that if I stayed close enough, long enough, maybe it would give him back to me." Michael Williams, who was only 6 years old when his father disappeared, grew up with an absence that fundamentally shaped his personality. At 21 years old in 2023, he had developed a deep aversion to mining, choosing to study computer science at Montana State University, a decision Linda secretly supported, but which broke the three-generation family tradition. Michael never talked about his father, observed Dr. Jennifer Hayes, school psychologist who followed the Williams children for years. But it was obvious that Robert's absence created a constant presence in his life. He avoided anything related to mines, tunnels, even natural caves during school excursions. Sarah Williams, 19 years old in 2023, reacted oppositely, developing an obsessive fascination with mining and geology. She studied old maps of Butte mines, read books about historic mining operations, and had even tried, at 16 years old, to explore abandoned tunnels in search of clues about her father's fate. Sarah inherited Robert's determination, Linda observed. She's convinced she can solve the mystery that professionals couldn't. It's simultaneously proud and terrifying to watch her follow her father's footsteps in ways that might not be safe. The Butte mining community developed its own theories and rituals around Robert's disappearance. At Continental Resources, a memorial plaque was installed in the main office. Robert Williams, Safety Guardian, 1974, 2008. New employees were always informed about his story as part of safety training. Robert became a local legend, explained Thomas Thompson, who retired as supervisor in 2018. A story we told to teach about the importance of never working alone underground, but also about the mysteries these old mines still keep. During the years 2010 through 2020, Montana's mining industry underwent dramatic changes. Many old operations were closed due to stricter environmental regulations, while new technologies allowed safer and more efficient exploration. Continental Resources itself was sold in 2016 to a Canadian corporation that implemented even more rigorous safety protocols. Changes in the industry meant that many of the mines where Robert had worked were officially abandoned, explained Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, now director of the Department of Mining Engineering at Montana Tech. Tunnels that were searched in 2008 became inaccessible due to natural collapses, flooding, or were simply sealed for safety reasons. Theories about Robert's fate evolved over the years, influenced by similar cases solved in other parts of the country. The industrial crime theory gained credibility when several cases of workers killed for discovering illegal activities were solved, revealing schemes of precious mineral and industrial equipment theft. Robert had access to information about all Continental Resources operations, observed Detective Kevin Walsh, who took over cold cases in 2015. If he had discovered systematic theft or illegal sale of materials, that could explain both the mysterious calls and his disappearance. The hidden accident theory remained popular among geologists and mining specialists. Mines are living structures that constantly change, Dr. Rodriguez explained. A tunnel stable in 2008 could have collapsed hours, days, or years later, sealing any evidence of what happened to Robert. In 2020, the Williams family organized a 12th anniversary ceremony at Butte Cemetery, where a symbolic marker was installed despite the absence of mortal remains. Approximately 300 people attended, including retired miners, Robert's colleagues, and residents who simply never forgot the man who disappeared in the depths. 12 years is a long time to live with unanswered questions, Linda Williams said during the ceremony. But as long as we're alive, we'll never stop looking for Robert. These mines won't keep their secrets forever. For investigators, Robert Williams's case became an example of how disappearances in complex industrial environments can remain unsolved. indefinitely. Mines create their own laws of physics, Detective Walsh observed. Signals don't penetrate. Evidence can be buried by collapses, and underground geography constantly changes. It's the perfect environment to make someone disappear completely. Technological advances during the 2010s brought new search tools, including specialized drones, ground-penetrating radar, and underground sonar systems. Walsh conducted 3 additional search operations between 2016 and 2022, using technology that didn't exist in 2008, but without success. Each new technology gave us renewed hope, Walsh explained. We managed to map mine sections that had never been adequately documented, identified several hidden chambers and unmapped tunnels, but Robert remained a ghost in the system. Abandoned mines around Butte became a growing public safety problem during the 2010s. Urban explorers, teenagers seeking adventure, and even homeless people began using abandoned tunnels, creating significant risks of accidents and need for expensive rescues. Ironically, the popularity of abandoned mines among explorers created more opportunities to discover evidence, Walsh observed. Each group that entered documented what they found, creating a crowdsourced database of underground conditions. In 2022, the 14th anniversary of the disappearance, Linda Williams had developed type 2 diabetes that she attributed to prolonged stress from uncertainty about Robert's fate. "My body is giving up the search, but my mind will never stop," she had confessed to Sarah. Sarah Williams, now studying geology at Montana Tech, had become an amateur specialist in Butte Mines' history. She maintained detailed maps of all conducted searches, her own theories about where Robert could be, and had even established contact with urban explorers active in the region. Sarah was essentially conducting her own parallel investigation, Walsh noted. She had interesting theories based on historical research that professionals might have missed. It was impressive and concerning at the same time. None of those involved in the long saga of Robert Williams' disappearance could have predicted that the answer would finally come from where they least expected. Not from advanced technology or professional investigation, but from a group of 20-something urban explorers who were documenting abandoned mines. For a YouTube channel, the discovery that would change everything happened on a sunny afternoon of October 15, 2023, almost exactly 15 years after Robert Williams' disappearance. Jake Morrison, 23 years old, leader of an urban explorer group known as Montana Underground, was conducting a documented expedition in the old Copper King mine, a historic operation that had been officially abandoned in 1982, but maintained underground. Connections with more modern operations. "We were exploring for our YouTube channel, documenting the history of Butte's abandoned mines," Morrison would explain later. Copper King was one of the largest operations of the 19th century, and we knew it had tunnels that had never been properly mapped or explored. Morrison and his 3-person team, Emily Chen, 22, specialist in underground photography, Marcus Rodriguez, 24, amateur historian, and Lisa Thompson, 25, geology student, were using moderately sophisticated exploration equipment. Helmets with high-power LED lights, GoPro cameras, gas detectors, and a compact drone to map larger chambers. We descended through what used to be Copper King's main shaft to approximately 200 meters deep, Chen reported. It was our 3rd expedition in the mine, so we knew the safe routes and areas to avoid. At 2:30 in the afternoon, approximately 2 hours into the exploration, the group discovered a previously unknown opening that connected Copper King with tunnels from more modern operations. We found a passage that had clearly been expanded or modified recently, much more recently than the mine's official abandonment. Rodriguez observed. The passage led to a series of chambers that showed evidence of human activity within the last few decades. Marks from modern tools, electrical cables that didn't correspond to Copper King's era, and most intriguingly, footprints preserved in dry sediment that appeared relatively fresh. We immediately knew we had found something significant, Thompson explained. The footprints were from industrial work boots, not exploration equipment. Someone with official access had been there, and not long ago. At 3:45, while documenting the main chamber of the newly discovered area, Emily Chen spotted something reflecting light from her LED flashlight in a narrow fissure in the rock wall. Initial inspection revealed it was an EBT artificial object, partially buried in sedimentary debris. I immediately realized it was a cell phone, Chen recalled. Even covered in 15 years of dust and sediment, you could still see a metallic surface and the characteristic shape. It was an older model, but in remarkably good condition. Careful excavation revealed a silver Nokia 6300, the same model Robert Williams had been carrying on the day of his disappearance. The device was in extraordinarily good condition due to the dry conditions and stable temperature of the mine, which had created an almost ideal environment for preservation. We immediately suspected it could be related to the Robert Williams case, Morrison explained. Everyone in Butte knows the story, and finding an old cell phone in a mine 15 years later, it wasn't a coincidence. The group immediately suspended their exploration and contacted local authorities. Detective Kevin Walsh arrived at the location at 6:20 in the evening, accompanied by a team of forensic technicians and mine safety experts. The recovery operation would be one of the most complex evidence collections ever conducted in Butte's underground. First priority was to document everything in situ before moving the device, Walsh explained. 15 years underground could have preserved evidence that would be destroyed if not handled correctly. Initial forensic analysis of the cell phone revealed surprising details. The device had apparently been functional until recently, protected from moisture by the mine's dry conditions. More importantly, internal memory still contained data that immediate analysis showed included text messages, call logs, and even partial video files. The preservation was almost miraculous, explained Dr. Michael Foster, digital forensics specialist brought in from Helena. 15 years underground, and we could still access most of the stored data. It was a digital time capsule of Robert Williams's last moments. Analysis of the location where the phone was found revealed additional crucial information. The chamber was approximately 600 meters underground and connected to multiple tunnel systems, both abandoned historical mines and modern operational areas. Most significantly, geological analysis confirmed it was precisely the type of location where cellular signals could occasionally penetrate due to specific rock formations creating natural signal corridors. The location explained how Robert's final text message could have been sent from such extreme depth, Dr. Rodriguez observed. He had found one of the few places underground where cellular communication was possible. More disturbing was the discovery that the chamber showed signs of recent structural modification. Support beams had been installed within the last 20 years, electrical infrastructure had been updated, and most ominously, there were indications that someone had been using the space regularly. Someone with knowledge of both historical mine systems and modern mining techniques had been utilizing this chamber, Walsh concluded. And based on evidence, they may still be active. News of the discovery spread through Butte with remarkable speed. By 7:30 in the evening, crowds had gathered at the entrance of Copper King Mine, including Linda Williams, Sarah Williams, and dozens of community members who had followed Robert's case for 15 years. Seeing the cell phone Emerge from a mine after all these years was simultaneously a relief and renewal of grief. Linda described, "We finally had physical evidence of where Robert had been, but it also confirmed our worst fears about what happened to him." For Sarah Williams, the discovery represented validation of years of personal research and theory development. "I always believed Dad was still in one of the connected mine systems," she said. "Finding his phone proves he managed to survive initially and was trying to communicate. The question now is what happened after that final message." Forensic analysis of the phone's contents, conducted over the following weeks, would reveal information that dramatically changed investigators' understanding of Robert Williams's final hours underground. But the discovery also raised new, more disturbing questions about who else had been using that remote underground chamber, and whether Robert's disappearance was truly an accident or something far more sinister. For the first time in 15 years, the Williams family had concrete evidence of Robert's fate. But as analysis of the cell phone progressed, it became clear that the truth about what happened on November 12, 2008, would be more complex and disturbing than anyone had imagined. The complete forensic analysis of Robert Williams's Nokia 6300, conducted over 6 weeks at the FBI laboratory in Quantico, revealed a final story that confirmed the worst fears of the family and investigators. Dr. Michael Foster managed to recover not only text messages and call records, but also 43 seconds of video that Robert had recorded in his final moments, evidence that finally explained why an experienced safety supervisor had broken all protocols to descend alone to the most dangerous depths of the mines. The video shows Robert documenting a sophisticated illegal mining operation that was using connections between abandoned and active mines to extract copper without authorization, Detective Kevin Walsh revealed during an emotional press conference. Robert had discovered a scheme that was stealing thousands of dollars in precious minerals, operating at night when official supervision was minimal. The recovered images showed modern mining equipment installed in supposedly abandoned tunnels, including conveyor belts, extraction tools, and storage containers filled with refined copper ore. More incriminating was Robert's audio commentary. "I have documented sufficient evidence for the FBI. This operation is connected to the missing inventory reports from the last 6 months." Analysis of call records revealed that the mysterious calls Robert had received were from informants within Continental Resources who had discovered the theft operation and contacted Robert as the safety supervisor responsible for investigating irregularities. "Robert wasn't going rogue," Walsh explained. "He was following proper protocols to investigate suspected criminal activity." The final message, "Everything will be fine. Don't worry about me," now had devastating context. Robert had been discovered by the thieves while documenting evidence. Audio analysis revealed voices in the background threatening Robert and ordering him to surrender his camera and cell phone. The message was sent under duress as Robert's last attempt to reassure his family. Evidence suggests Robert was killed to prevent exposure of the theft operation, Walsh concluded, based on forensic analysis of the chamber where the phone was found. The location had been used as a temporary disposal site, with Robert's body likely moved to a secondary location after the initial confrontation. In January of 2024, arrests were made of 4 individuals connected to the illegal mining operation, including 2 former Continental Resources employees and a manager who had provided inside information about security schedules. Robert's investigation, even though cut short, provided sufficient evidence to dismantle an operation that had stolen approximately $2.3 million in copper and precious metals over 4 years, Walsh announced. For Linda Williams, the revelations brought a mixture of closure and renewed pain. Knowing that Robert died defending his principles and protecting others, There is comfort in knowing he remained true to his values until the end, she said. But the fact that criminals managed to operate under our noses for years while Robert's death went uninvestigated is devastating. Sarah Williams, now 21 years old and graduating with a degree in geology, found purpose in her father's legacy. "Dad's dedication to safety and stopping crime inspires my career path," she declared. "I want to work in mine safety regulation to ensure that other families never experience what we've been through." Today, Robert Williams's case serves as a stark reminder that industrial crimes can turn fatal when workers discover operations that threaten criminal profits. His investigation, completed posthumously through preserved digital evidence, not only brought justice, but saved other potential victims from continuing exploitation of Montana's underground resources. 15 years after entering a mine for the last time, Robert Williams finally came home.